Hello everyone, this is Nichel Anderson. I'm your host for my podcast show, Surviving Your Journey Towards Success. Thank you so much for joining me in my month ending of my season 5. And I'm getting ready to progress to my usual summer break after May, so I'm very appreciative of that, getting some time off where I plan and do my little vacation time there before I return back in September. So today's podcast is focusing on when is the best time to offer training. So if you're just joining me, I talk about the corporate world, and I talk about, even if you're not in the corporate world, you have your own business or your own group projects. I talk about basically working with one another to get the objective done. And I also talk about surviving your journey on a personal level, the interaction of, being with other people and vibrating or living your life in a very positive way that, number one, you get your mental peace, and number two, you're respected in your worth. So that's basically what this show is about. It all started with my book, Corporate America, Surviving Your Journey Towards Success. And by doing some tweets on Twitter, I wanted to kind of expand on those quotes. So anyway, that's a little bit about that. If you're just joining me, I'm about to wrap up my season, but I want to get into this. So before I do, I always like to say a good statement to kind of before I start, and that is, in this day, I am thankful to the prime creator of all things, that I give thanks for this blessing and opportunity, that I will use it for the greater good. So welcome, my survivors of the journey, to my podcast today that aims to inspire and motivate you to continue to have joyfulness, peace of mind, and for your sustained success. So let's go ahead and get into this. I'm not going to make this podcast long. I want it to be informative and encouraging. And I think training over the last 2 decades, a lot of companies are in the position, or definitely started implementing not so much focus on training, which is very important. So today we're going to look at when you felt that training was done in the beginning. That's pretty much it. And sometimes companies will have interactive, I should say, not just interactive, but occasionally like a fresher up, you should say. In the United States, that just means that let's go ahead and review what we did in the beginning when you first came with the company. Where today I'm talking about the difference of to offer training that is needed in a much more in-depth way, or to revisit something that needs to be changed. And so therefore there's new processes. So basically the main point I want you to take away today is that training needs to be an ongoing objective whenever it is needed, even during times that might not be ideal, like during busy seasons. But companies need to think about the long term and not the short term goal, in a reference of the game, by just continue to work how it's going, go through all of that, when we really need training and to reevaluate, what's the best way as of now. So the important point that I like to start in my podcast is that you will know when you will know when is the best time to offer travel is when you are observing obstacles to complete the position task stagnates and restrictive. Okay, for example, it takes forever to complete a particular task, like hours or more than what it normally should. So you need to do other steps to compensate to where you need to be to get that particular objective done. And mostly that is resulting from a lack of updated training. B, you have a high turnover, so you're constantly retraining, but your training has not been updated or tested to see it works. That's another thing I want to do as a bonus on this particular important point. You have to test out your training, and maybe that's a separate podcast I need to do. But when you test out your training, you are testing out to what's the growing trends of the interaction with your customers, and they should be able to know exactly what works for them on their perspective, and the employee should be able to know what they learned actually works or not. And then you go back, you have to treat training like a product, because you basically selling the brand, for one. Number two, you are presenting the logical position of thinking it through to be able to deliver that and communicate that. And then lastly, I would say C, and still on number one of my point of, you will know when you have these obstacles that, okay, I need to offer training. And that last point is that the industry can change. And by changing, of course, you don't want to be constantly doing training or constantly changing things, because change is huge. I did a podcast on that. I advise you to check that out. But industry changes, basically, it's like going to a supermarket and they have these different types of flavors of spices. Each of those spices can bring the flavor of your dish to a whole different level. So you have to kind of pick and choose which of the, because you want to do something different. Let's say it's the holidays, what have you, and you want to be able to bring something new that will further encourage the people that you're inviting to come back to the next holiday dinner or something like that. So you have to look at the industry changes, not that, oh, okay, now I have to do this over, I have to reinvest, because I know it's time and money, but it's a good thing because the spices are healthy, it's encouraging, it's going to motivate and all of that. So number 2, moving on to my important point, you will know when to offer training with seasonal type employees, how they interact with customers. They are the best ones that've been there, the seasoned ones, the tenured type employees. They can identify those challenges. They can articulate it much better. They can be able to show you what is preventing them to be able to serve the customer, right? To give that customer service experience and how they interact and how make them feel. You want your employees to feel that they can accomplish the job and so forth. So that's when you will offer training based on the other 3 that I mentioned before, is when the industry change, or when the process needs to be reevaluated based on the decision making of the blueprint. Number 3, important point, you will know it is time to offer training. And we're dealing now with the technology. When the software not only is outdated, that's a big one in most companies, but your employees is frustrated in what they thought to have doesn't really correlate or match up to the position that now no longer offers the mental peace of doing it. Because if the software, the technology is outdated, or you have to do so many extra tasks to get the job done, employees' mind, they get disengaged, they get exhausted. And it's hard to do that great customer service when you just like, oh my gosh, I got to go through 50 steps to be able to get this, or the systems is taking so long and it's just frustrating. So you want to be able to simplify those tasks so they can focus on customer service. Customer service is equate to your brand identity, and brand identity, your identity, I can get it out. Your brand identity is gold. All right, let's move on to wisdom point number 2. So when we invest in newer technology combined with employees tapping into their interaction and the process from beginning to the end of serving the customer, your technology tools and knowledge bank needs to be updated daily. It needs to be reevaluated, if not monthly, definitely by quarterly, which I would say that's kind of going too far out, because it has to be constantly up on par, right? And you will be able to then easily transition to create those training models and sessions that you can break it up during the month, right? Or during the quarter. I think, to me, training every month, I know for some companies like, oh my God, I can't do that. But if you really sit down and plan it out how you could, 2 hours or what have you, break it up in different groups, it can be done when another way. Now, some people could say, you could just send an email and say, look, it's a great tip, you could try this. And I think that's great. But what if you're a type of business and you constantly have so many interactions with customers? You have long lines, you have the phone ringing off the hook. You can't do it. Okay, so you have to come up with another strategy, because the urgency is, if you don't, those long lines and those phones will continue on, and then you have to worry about overtime. Then you have to worry about staff is new to the floor, what have you. And that could be because of high turnovers. That could be a lot of people are out or exhausted, going on FMLA, which is Family Leave Act, what have you. So it doesn't really play. So you have to look at that whole spectrum. When you do that, you're in position to succeed. All right, so let me go ahead and wrap this up with my motivational takeaway. And that is, when we invest in our employees and team members, we expand the brand, and a supportive foundation is created that enriches the style and reinforce your message of dependability with your customers. All right, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I really think that in the future I'm going to make like a training series, because I think companies, stepped away from that, thinking we don't need that much to invest in the training, which is the opposite. You should do. You should do more. It really changes the ball game, and it reinforces. Training is your brand, because the training will represent the employee, know what to do, how to do it, implement it, and they can focus on servicing the customer. You go to, and remember, when you go to a particular place and the person on the other side don't know what the heck they're doing, they get frustrated. So then they're not being nice to the customer. So you think about that, how you felt. And if that can flip around and take some of these ideas that I'm presenting to you today, can change the game. All right. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a good one. So I see you in the next episode. All right. Thank you.